Now, the heliocentric globe model asserts Earth's atmosphere is a high-pressure gas, 14.7 psi at sea level. Space is a near-zero pressure vacuum. No solid barrier or membrane exists between them, and the interface is maintained solely by gravity. This would make Earth the only known system where high-pressure gas is held adjacent to a vacuum without a barrier.
Physics and logic on a level supreme. It's a curved reality, split and flurf dreams.
Hey folks, Scary CK here. So instead of doing a Mikey video, because I've done quite a bit of those, I decided I'm going to check out Eric Dubay video. And this is one of his latest ones he's done, if not the latest one, at least last time I was on his page. And he's just pretty much just talking about the globe and shit like that. Now, I'm going to break down his different points he's put out. Shouldn't be too long of a one, so hopefully it's alright. Now, I did speed up Eric Dubay because he talks super slow. He's like, here is what I am doing. This is how the globe must be. So because we're not flurfs and we don't need to be spoken to like simple freaking children, I sped it up to about 1.3, 1 point around there. So should be a little less painful because here, we'll get to his points a lot faster. So let's get to it.
Modern cosmology operates under a dominant paradigm known as the heliocentric globe model, which describes Earth as a spinning spheroid orbiting the Sun within a vacuum environment governed by gravitational forces. Despite institutional consolidation, this paradigm is seldom subjected to first principles falsification using physical evidence available to non-institutional observers. Instead, validation is usually delegated to professional expertise, institutional authorities, classified or inaccessible domains, non-reproducible demonstrations, or consensus as a stand-in for evidence.
Alright, so everything he had said there is pretty much other than the fact of describing that the Earth is obviously a spheroid, traveling through the vacuum of space, and it does actually have rotation. Everything else he said is pretty much fucking wrong. Anybody can go and test the shape of the Earth. It's not hard. It is not expensive. And it's definitely not beyond the realm of pretty much anybody who wants to do it nowadays. Simple observation. I'll show you one here. Boom, yes, ships going over the horizon. So, first principle falsification. Easy. If the Earth's a globe, then eventually you're going to see things disappear bottom up. Earth is flat. They're going to keep going and going and going until eventually the whole entire thing goes smaller and smaller and smaller and tiny, tiny and tiny, right? Ship go over the horizon. Well, it's not down to perspective, it's not down to that, because I can still see the little aerials on top. I can still see the wheelhouse. I can still see the smaller bits, but I can't see the biggest part of the ship, being the whole entire hull. The hull should be the last thing to disappear if it's perspective. So it's not perspective, flirfs. As much as you guys like to throw that word around, you don't know what it is. So there's the first principle verification. Earth's a globe. Things eventually disappear over the horizon, bottom up. Earth's a sphere. You should see things keep going on until eventually the smallest things will disappear first because you can't resolve them anymore, and get to the point where eventually the biggest thing will disappear. Will all disappear uniformly into one point. Also, the fact that obviously a clear-cut horizon, well, you wouldn't see that on the flyer. So another falsification is simply this: if Earth's a flat plane, then eventually things will go off and off and off until eventually it gets hazed out, and stuff like that. They can't be resolved. The big things like a whole entire island, like I can't see Ireland from the west coast of England. I can look straight across the Irish Sea. I can't see Ireland, right? Ireland's a big island, right? I should be able to see that very easy. The Earth's flat. I can't see that. Easily explained on the globe. It's over the curvature of the Earth. Just simple fact. This is too far. Curvature of the Earth. It goes over the curvature of the Earth. First principle of falsification, right there. If the Earth's flat, I should be able to see Ireland, very big, or I should at least be able to see a haze. Earth's a globe. It should be this much going over the curvature of the Earth, and actually stands up to testing. So once again, easily falsifiable, easy first principle verification. Anybody can do it. I'm not an institution. I don't work for any government. I don't work for anything like that. I'm a simple mechanic. Note the hat. So I'm not you. I'm just a blue collar worker. So I'm just an every day guy. I have a mobile phone like most people in the world. Easy to test. So yeah, right there, Eric Dubay. Lying grifter, but we all know this, now don't we?
This raises a rarely considered epistemic problem, namely, is the globe model empirically verified, or is it institutionally maintained? A model qualifies as scientific only to the extent that it is testable, meaning claims can be evaluated against physical reality; falsifiable, meaning model failure is logically possible; reproducible, meaning experiments yield consistent results; and independent of authority, meaning truth is not contingent on institutional validation. For a cosmological framework, these criteria must apply at the level of physics, geometry, environmental behavior, and observational confirmation. If a model fails these criteria, it is not necessarily false, but it ceases to operate scientifically and enters the domain of belief, consensus, or institutional narrative.
I find it interesting Dubay brings that up because that's pretty much the flat earth model. Every time I've asked a flat earther for empirical evidence to support their model, they don't have any. They can't provide a single scrap. Now the globe actually can be independently verified. As I just mentioned before, so you can see distant objects like large ships disappear bottom up over the horizon, or you can see wind turbines. Where the further wind turbines, you can see less and less to the point where it looks like the blades are actually hitting the water. The Earth is flat; you would never see that. You see them simply the same size, get smaller and smaller. Eventually, you wouldn't see the blades because they're the smallest part, and the last thing you'd see is probably the base of it, which is the fattest part. And you just see them getting smaller and smaller. You don't actually see that. I have observations on my page here video where I showed. I can put a picture up here of wind turbines once further away. It looks like the blades hitting the water. So that wouldn't happen. That's only because they're actually going dropping over a horizon, over the curvature of the Earth. Sunrise and sunsets, and the fact this can be easily independently verified because solar filter take pictures and measurements of the sun throughout the day. You notice it doesn't change angular size. If the Earth was flat and the sun is floating above it, then as the sun's first thing in the morning, it'd actually be quite small and tiny. You can verify this. As it goes over just about solar noon, just over it's around noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever, it depends where solar noon is. It would actually look the biggest. You could measurably see that. And then as it goes to get into evening, before and like that, you'd actually see the sun going very tiny until it goes to a very pinprick. That doesn't happen. I've actually independently verified this. No institution needed. All I needed was just simply a camera and a solar filter. A proper solar filter, not what some of the flirts like to use. And in mine, I'd use my mobile phone. I put the grid pattern on, use the grid pattern to measure the size of the sun. Sun didn't change angular size. You can go and use a theodolite. You can go rent one. It's not very expensive. Maybe learn how to use it. Go out and measure, and make sure it's leveled. Go out and measure and notice that things seem to curve away. The horizon does not rise to eye level. This can be independently verified, not a problem. You can go get the proper instrumentation and test it. You can even go get like a grade rod and notice how you can see that, like over large bodies of water, these things, you can see how there's actually curvature. This has been done many times by professional surveyors who actually know what they're doing. They use this stuff on a daily basis, as well as people independent who just learned how to use the surveying equipment, bought some, and went and did it themselves. You can see it on TikTok, you can see it on YouTube, many videos done numerous times, and these are all repeatable experiments. So far, every time I ask flat earthers to try to show a mechanism or prove anything comes to their model, they have nothing. Most flat earthers, their evidence of the falsify the globe is to deny the globe, or their evidence to prove flat earth is to deny the globe. That's not evidence, that's simply just denial of objective reality. Yes, there are other things that have been done, that like measuring distance to the moon using retroreflectors, but it also has been done independently by people like ham radio operators that do a Earth, Moon, Earth radio bounce, and this has been done, verified, and been repeated many times. So yeah, can easily be done. There's many things you can do. Depends how much money you want to spend and how much thought you want to put into it. But every single time a well thought out experiment comes out, even if it's independent, it's evidence for the globe. Sorry, but they've all been independently verified, repeated, and repeated again. Or send up a high altitude balloon with a rectilinear lens, and guess what you'll find? The curvature of the Earth, left to right. But not hard.
In modern society, many claims are held not through direct verification, but through trust chains. For example, Earth curves, Earth spins, gravity holds the atmosphere. Space is a vacuum. Objects orbit Earth. The Sun is 93 million miles away, and water curves around the Earth. For the average person, and even for the average scientist, outside of specific fields, these claims are not observed directly, and are instead validated by things like textbooks, images, the education system, the mainstream media, institutional statements, and consensus.
Well, the funny thing is, I've already explained that the curvature of the Earth can be easily verified and measured with anybody can really do that if you just want to take the time and do the effort. Like I said, just seeing large objects, large ships and stuff disappear over the horizon. That's the effect of curvature of the Earth. Get a theodolite, you can measure it. The distance to the Sun, that can actually be done if you've got a couple friends. You do observation at the solar noon, like on the solstice and stuff, know where the GP of the sun is, and then measure the angle. Yeah, you have a stick straight up like that. Two different things. If you have, better off to have like 3-4 people. This was done by Simon Dan did this, I think 7 months ago. He had like 100 or 1,000 people that did it, and using those measurements of knowing the locations and knowing the angle of the shadow, they're able to measure, calculate the distance to the sun using trigonometry, and they got pretty damn close. Obviously, this was done by Eratosthenes way back in ancient Greece, and he actually was fairly close. And this has been done before, and so yeah, measuring the distance to the sun. You can also use, if you happen to be lucky enough to see like the transit of Venus, which won't be for a long time. It's happened just a few years ago. And I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime because it's not very common that we can actually observe that. But knowing that Venus is about the same size as us, and you can use that by using some trigonometry. When Venus is on, at the very side of the sun, you can see it was in half moon, kind of like half phase, because it's got the same phases, being that it's inside the orbit of us. And it's about the same size as us. We've verified that. We've sent probes there. Then measuring that distance from there, knowing what's at that point there, and then knowing the distance to the sun, go from there. Or you can do the transit, it goes across there, how big it is, how fast it moves. You can do the transit of Mercury, that was done the way it was done, and then using some bit of calculations and trigonometry. Yeah, flips, you have to know how to use a bit of math, but yeah, you can verify and get a pretty good accurate calculation of how far the sun is. Big thing is, it tends to be in the millions of miles, and that doesn't work for the flat Earth model whatsoever. So it may not be exactly in 93 million miles or so, but this has already been done. Stanford University did it in 1959, where they did strong radio waves, and they actually sent a signal, a coded signal, up towards the sun, and then waited for it to bounce back. Obviously, it's a distance to the moon, but easier. You can use radio waves, like I said, ham radio, and you get about 250,000 miles because you know the speed of light already. Or you can use something like parallax and get a measure from there. Have 2 friends over like a certain distance, like say about maybe a few miles and stuff. Both have telescopes where you can see the stars. Take images from the stars, use parallax, you get a pretty good calculation. All this stuff can be independently verified. You don't actually need big government. People have done this, do this, happens all the time, so it's verifiable and repeatable. As for the scientific community, well, there is something called peer review, and scientists love to rip apart other scientists' work. They will look for anything that doesn't make sense and doesn't work, and they would love to send it back and say you didn't do this right. Peer review is quite brutal. I've listened to several scientists explain how peer review it's like a thing they like to do. Like they say, even down to the fact if a sentence isn't right, I's aren't dotted, commas aren't there, they'll send it back. They'll say, no, that doesn't make sense. We don't like that. So, even the scientific community, it's people who have devoted their lives into certain things, into a study, maybe into geodesy, maybe into astronomy, maybe into astrophysics and stuff like that. This is what they do, right? You wouldn't take your car to a dentist to get, to have a misfire diagnosed, would you? Nor would you go to a mechanic to have your teeth looked at. But guess what? You swap those two around, 2 people devote their lives to that. They're specialists in their field, and you trust them to do what they need to do.
These may constitute a trusted knowledge domain, but not a scientifically verified one. In contrast, claims like water seeking level, gas pressure equalizing, vacuums requiring containment, and objects visible at long distances, are directly verifiable without institutional mediation. These are empirical domains that do not require trust chains. The burden of proof lies not with the challenger, but with any model making claims that contradict direct sensory evidence, physical laws, laboratory demonstration, or experimental reproducibility.
And that's where Flat Earth falls short pretty much every single time. They cannot produce any of those things. They can't show verifiable, testable experiments. They can't show measurements. They can't show anything that's actually can be reproducible. Don't believe me? Ask a flat earther, how high is the sun above the surface of the earth? They won't tell you, or you'll get a different answer every single time from every single different flat earther, because they actually don't know. And every time they do give a number, it pretty much falsifies their model every single time. On average, I think I've had 3,000 miles, they've said, is the sun above the earth, which then when I used that and I used a round table and put it to scale, it kind of falsified a lot of different things. One thing is the fact is that really I'm standing here at night, and if the earth was flat, I could be in the dark, but I'd still see the light of the sun. I'd still be able to see exactly where the sun is. I may be in the shadow, but you can see that. It's just like the fact, and they say, well, how can it happen? Well, it's easy like this. If I turn off my light here, I'm in the dark, I can still see the light. It's that easy, right? And that light's actually being blocked. If I stand over here, I can't even stand over here, right? That's what would happen on flat Earth, though, except for the fact there's nothing block it. There's no physical object like I have a fridge there, but I still be able to see the light, and this light still bouncing off things, or actually the sky be lit off to somewhere else like that, right? So, simple demonstration to show that how the flat Earth completely falls apart. So, yeah.
2 examples clearly illustrate this principle. If a model claims standing water curves, the burden lies on the model to demonstrate curvature in a natural or controlled setting.
Which already described that. Take a theodolite, take a grading rod, get somebody a mile away, measure it. You notice that you'll actually get curvature that the grading rod or if your target would be below you, even though you both have, it's both the same level. This has been done by Baron Rutledge and several other surveyors. Or, like I said, my observation where it showed the ship disappearing with the curvature of the Earth. It's not done perspective, because perspective, the wheelhouse would disappear first, and the other smaller bits. But yet, the hull is what disappears first, bottom up, which is what would be expected on a spherical Earth and would not be expected on a flat Earth. So here we are, we have if the Earth is spherical, I should see this object disappear bottom up. If the Earth is flat, if the Earth isn't a sphere and it's flat, then I should see it take off in the distance, and then they get smaller and smaller. Smaller parts disappear first, and the biggest part, like the hull, should be the last thing that I couldn't be able to resolve anymore. We don't see that, so flat Earth falsified, but what we do expect to see is what we do see, so that gives verification that the Earth is actually a globe.
If a model claims gas pressure can exist adjacent to a vacuum without containment, the burden lies on the model to demonstrate such a system.
Which also has been done numerous times. Don't believe me? Get a barometer, stand on the bottom of a mountain, take a reading, climb on top of the mountain, take a reading. How come you have a lot less pressure as you get higher up? On top of Everest, people actually have to have oxygen because the air is so thin. But on the bottom, they can breathe absolutely fine in Nepal. Why is that? Now, picture if you went higher than Everest. If you kept going up, it goes thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. The pressure keeps dropping, the air gets thinner. No physical barrier. Where's the barrier between the bottom of the mountain and the top of the mountain? There's none. I've actually tested this in my own home. Your mobile phone actually has a barometer built into it, funny enough. You can download a simple app, barometer app, take a reading. You can get down to actually it's like 3 decimal places behind the decimal. Gets pretty accurate. I tested it at a video where I showed it on bottom, on base, my ground floor of my house. I went to the 2nd floor and I tested. It'll be slightly less, only a little bit, slightly less pressure on the 2nd floor. Now, there's no barrier, right? I went up to, it's all open, my house is open, all got stairs, go up and down, no physical barrier. But yet this could be measured and tested. Now, think if I went higher up than that, on top of the roof, maybe slightly less pressure. If I went up into, a crane, like a skylift, it'd be slightly less pressure. If I went up into the balloon and went different things, it'd go less and less and less. So yeah, this is easy. There's absolutely no pressure, no barrier, but yet that's what we have. Now, all really a vacuum is simply a low pressure center where you have very little to no molecules. That's all a vacuum is. It's just where there's no stuff. There's nothing there. There's no air molecules. Vacuums don't suck. What you actually have is that higher pressure pushes in to fill that because it's pushing, right? So your vacuum cleaner, how it is, it create I had a discussion with Flat Earther on X on this. Vacuum cleaner, what it does is it has a fan. It creates a low pressure center inside of itself in a container. The higher pressure on the end of the hose pushes up, pulls things in with it, right? As it's pushing up, it's has things that pushes up the hose. That's why you have the vacuum. You have usually something pushing out like a fan. It feels like a fan, hot air going to the back of your vacuum, because it's pushing a bunch of stuff out, causing a low pressure center inside, and then high pressure on the end of the hose is pushing stuff up, and as it pushes stuff up, it takes stuff with it. That's kind of how a vacuum cleaner works. It's actually really simple, but yeah, so no container, but yet you can have a vacuum. This is a vacuum, is just less and less stuff, right? Verifiable, repeatable, empirical.
Appealing to theoretical constructs, like saying gravity does it, without a reproducible demonstration, fails the burden of proof.
Except for gravity is kind of creates a force, and the force being a downward vector, 9.8 meters per second squared, downward vector. And this could actually be repeatable easily. I did this using butane, and it showed that in an open container, but a butane, I could just put it in there, it stays there, it's fine. And how I demonstrated that is the fact that I sprayed it and left it for quite a while, and then I just lit a lighter to show there's still butane in there, right? Because butane is heavier in air and flammable. I also showed the opposite of this by having an open jar, putting over top of a candle, and then showing that when I put the candle down, it actually had burnt up all the oxygen. All it had is carbon dioxide in there. And when I put it down, it put the candle out. It wasn't sealed because Flat Earthers claim you have to have a sealed container to maintain gas, to maintain pressure. But yet, I showed two different demonstrations that showed there was no seal, and yet it still maintained pressure. So, yeah, it's been demonstrated many times. Flat Earthers just, never underestimate the power of a Flat Earthers. Nuh-uh. And also, simply the fact is that a force can hold gas. Force can contain gas, plain and simple. And I've showed this many times.
Authorities can be wrong, and have been, historically, across many domains, including physics, astronomy, and cosmology. Thus, institutional consensus can only be treated as a claim and not proof. Certain phenomena sit at the top of the credibility hierarchy because they are directly observable, repeatable, and instrument confirmable. For example, the phenomenon of water seeking level is an empirical, repeatable, and directly observable claim that anyone can confirm for themselves.
I love that video he's showing there when he shows the Earth, the sun isn't local, because you can see the sun's quite a bit further above the Earth, yet it's still quite far away. And also, I'm pretty sure you can see curvature in that, but sometimes Flat Earthers like to use fisheye lenses and show below the center of frames, and it flattens out because it's distorting up. So like the fact that obviously Dubay is guilty of this. Like most Flat Earthers, level and flat are not the same thing. I've already demonstrated this where I showed something where it was level but not flat, and I showed something that was flat but not level. They're not the same thing, they're actually different. And what he's referring to where the authorities were, things were proven wrong, is the fact is that we had a very limited knowledge way back in the day of certain things, and we had our best guess and stuff what we had. And then better science came along and actually showed empirical evidence in which then either falsified something that we had made a guess, like something about like there was at one point that science thought that there was a luminiferous ether that light needed to travel through, kind of like sound through water. And then when they've done several different tests, they realized that they falsified the fact that ether even existed. The luminiferous ether didn't exist. They found no sign of it. All their tests, all their theories of how it worked came up with a null result. So we had better, and then we had better science. Then we had stuff like general relativity came out with, and explained things much more accurately and better. And then through our testing, like using Palm-Rebka experiment, or using different things like gravity probe A, gravity probe B, and different things, and atomic clocks, we actually have been able to verify this and understand that the as well as there was an experiment where they showed that they could that the sun actually bent because there's a large gravity well, and you could see stars that are just like behind it during an eclipse. I can't remember what that one was. It was done where I think some guy went down to Brazil, stuff like that, and it was to verify Einstein's general relativity, which verified it. As I said, so we had this, explained it better, and it was tested and tested again, and all verified that it works, and it still works to this day. Newtonian physics works for many different things, and then you have Einstein, you have general and special relativity, which work for larger objects moving much faster. And this is held up to this day. Now, if something better comes along, then we have something better that explains things just as well or better, then that could be something adopted. This is one thing Flat Earth cannot do, never has done. But it's been asked for, is that fact, if they say we got something better, then show it. Show something that can work just as well, better than what we have now. So far, 2,500 years, the Flat Earth has failed every single time. It's never shown anything that works better than the heliocentric or the barocentric globe model.
The phenomenon of vacuums requiring containment is empirical, repeatable, and experimentally verifiable.
That's funny because you're using vacuum chambers in a pressurized system. When we are saying, like, let's say if I set up a vacuum chamber right now in my kitchen, I would need to have it contained where I can draw the vacuum out, because I'm actually in a system that's over 14 psi. So that psi is going to be trying to go in there. So I have to barrier that between each other. As we go higher up, I probably would need as much of wouldn't need as thick or strong as a container, because it wouldn't have as much pressure on the outside pushing in. If I went way up into like a high altitude, like a U-2 spy plane, I could probably still draw the same vacuum, but I only had to have thinner walls. It wouldn't take nearly as long, due to the fact that I just wouldn't have as much in there in the first place. So this is obviously verifiable and repeatable. Is the fact, as the higher altitude you go, you get less pressure and less until eventually you get to the point where you have next to no pressure. That's what we call space.
And the phenomenon of the horizon revealing more with magnification is also empirical, repeatable, and instrument confirmable.
Another fact that we have sometimes have refractive conditions are looming. As we can see, like looming can affect electromagnetic radiation, so like light or radio waves or microwaves. Other than that, pretty much everything that we see using geometry and knowing just basic refractive conditions when we look out and see stuff is confirmed straight to the globe. And but yet this works the flat Earth model, because the flat Earth model, we actually look into it and think about it. There's a lot what we see, we should see, and we don't see enough for the flat Earth model to actually be verified. So that's actually not right. He's making a claim, but he's actually never showed this evidence. Every time the flat Earthers show their long distance stuff, they are lying, like the one where they said there was the mountains and there's actually clouds, or they are not taking into account stuff, other variables like the refractive conditions, the altitude of the observer, and the altitude of what they're looking at, and then actually probably how much they're actually seeing. Sometimes they claim they see more than they actually do. But when you actually look into their claims and you look further into it, you realize either things are being left out, they're lying, or they're simply just wrong.
In contrast, the phenomenon of Earth curvature is model-dependent, indirect, and theoretical. The phenomena of stellar, solar, and lunar distances are derived, indirect, and theoretical.
Curvature is verifiable and it can be easily observed, and solar distances, well, like I say, distance to the moon is being independently verified by non-scientific people like that. People just say with ham radio or just using by parallax. You can verify the distance to the moon, and as well as using some trigonometry and a bit more, and then using like different experimentation. We can have obviously more people, like say you're doing the kind of like the Eratosthenes experiment, but have a lot more people and know where the GP of the sun is, where it's directly above, then you can actually use some calculations and verify or get a fairly good accurate representation of how far the sun is from the earth. And like I said, Simon and Dan did this with like many people, and he showed that how it works on the globe, but it doesn't work on the flat Earth. If you have 3 or more people and do Eratosthenes experiment, then you can show that how it has to be, the Earth has to be a globe and the sun has to be far away, and the flat Earth, it just doesn't work because the observations of what you see and how it works and what you get wouldn't work on the flat Earth whatsoever.
And the phenomenon of outer space being a vacuum is institutional and inaccessible.
No, not really. If you just use a little bit of logic, really, on the fact, what is a vacuum? A vacuum is just an area where it has no particles, no matter, no air pressure, and we can come to this conclusion yourself if simply just, I don't know, stick a barometer that records onto a balloon, send the balloon up, have a tracker when it comes down, high altitude balloon, and look and see how you can watch how the air pressure drops off to pretty much nearly nothing, and then as it comes down, you see the air pressure come back up again. Verifiable that there's a vacuum. The higher you go up, the less pressure there is, which then means that when you get to the point that there's a vacuum being nothing. Remember, vacuums don't suck. It's just simply nothing there, and we have a downward vector which holds the atmosphere to our Earth.
In the hierarchy of credibility, direct empirical phenomena hold greater weight than indirect institutional claims. This doesn't completely invalidate indirect claims, but it does prevent them from serving as defeaters against direct physical behavior. Once these epistemic rules are set, the evaluation becomes straightforward. A cosmological model must be able to demonstrate its claims physically, explain observed behavior without contradiction, operate without unverifiable escape clauses, and withstand falsification attempts.
Exactly, which the heliocentric globe model, or barocentric globe model, has been for 2,500 years, and yet, even to this day, the flat Earth has still never actually presented a verifiable model that actually works without contradictions. You can bring up something like northern star trails and southern star trails. Can flat earthers explain how those work? Because we have 2 points of rotation going opposite. So in the northern hemisphere, the stars rotate around a center point that goes counterclockwise, and in the southern hemisphere we have a central point that go and then rotate clockwise. As well as southern hemisphere, like Australia, some parts of like South America, South Africa, stuff like that, can't see Polaris, and we can't see Crux or Southern Cross, and that's easily explained on the globe. The fact is just the globe's in the way, but yet we can't explain this on the flat Earth without them invoking some sort of magical rescuing device, as well as like say sunsets. Example, like say sunset, you go down to Australia, sunset, as you go sets down, it actually goes from right to left. It rotates, it goes this way. In the northern hemisphere, the sun actually sets from left to right, goes that way, and doesn't change angular size either way. The southern one really is a problem for this flat Earth because they can't explain that unless they start invoking some sort of magical dome, personal dome, and they make claims that your eyes only see a certain way, and just make up a load of crap. Most of it's bullshit, and they have no. And we ask them to show citations to verify their claims. They don't. They run. So yeah, that's pretty much the flat Earth model in a nutshell.
If it fails in any domain, scientific rigor demands revision, reduction, or replacement of the model. This is not controversy or conspiracy, it's the scientific process. So let's now examine the 3 scientific test vectors mentioned earlier, namely hydrostatic equilibrium, or water-seeking level, thermodynamic containment, Kelvin's second law, and optical occlusion, the fact that we see too far, and assess whether these core physical phenomena align with the heliocentric rotating spheroid model or an enclosed stationary plane framework. In all experimental and environmental contexts accessible to human observation, water exhibits the following behaviors. It assumes the shape of its container. It equalizes via pressure. It settles into hydrostatic equilibrium. and it forms a planar, horizontal surface.
Which is funny because, yes, water does maintain its level, and maintains level. If you look up the definition of how level in regards to the Earth, it's a maintaining, it's to conform to the liquid parts of the Earth, to the curved liquid parts of the Earth. Level, when it comes to reference to the Earth, is as long as it maintains a equal distance around the curvature of the Earth, that's considered level to the surface. So, yeah, that works. And remember, water is actually subject to the forces acting upon it. Doesn't care what shape the container is, it's just that the forces act upon it. So if it's in a container, this forces is going to have, it's going to push out against that, it's going to have a downward vector pushing down on it, and it's going to also want to spread out, but it's going to have its going to carry. If there's no forces acted upon it, like I said, we've done several different tests, ISS, and the has actually shown water takes a spherical shape. Or if you have something like I showed something like this here we are, where it's I had a water balloon, water at rest, because we always see water has to be at rest. That's at rest, it wasn't moving. I simply popped the balloon, which is removed the balloon from it real quick, and you can see that water still maintained its spherical shape because it was still maintaining the forces that are acting upon it. When it started to fall, then it had wind resistance pushing up, and then the water started to spread out because it's now encountering another force as going down. It's encountering wind resistance, which is then pushing up on it and spreading it out as it's trying to fall down. But if you look at raindrops and stuff sitting on something, then you have the forces, hydroelectric forces, which maintains raindrops into little tiny balls, as well as them falling down. They're still, when they have nothing acting upon them, either they're coming down, they're able, but it's not enough force to push up on them, cause it to spread out. They still maintain a spherical shape.
This behavior is consistent across all scale domains, from the laboratory, like beakers, graduated cylinders, and basins, to engineered, like reservoirs, canals, locks, and ballast tanks, to natural, like lakes, bays, seas, and oceans. In no domain does standing water spontaneously curve across its surface.
Except for water does curve because the Earth has a gravitational force which pulls everything to the center of it. And that's why you can see, as I showed my ship one that I showed here, why the ship's disappeared bottom up, but still on top of the water is a ship. Or I could show the wind turbines again, which wise the wind turbines a lot lower. Looks like those blades are going to hit the water. If the Earth is flat, but they're not, because all those turbines are still the same altitude above the water, but the water is curving over. Or you have different observations and stuff like measurements through like satellites and stuff showing that water is actually below eye level and curving, like I said, where I could show like the one from the black swan here, with not loads of atmospheric refraction and distortion, and you can see how the further the platform is actually lower, and you can see less of it because the water is once again curving. So yeah, we do see that because the water is conforming to the forces acting upon it, being a gravitational force pulling everything to the center, and it's staying on the surface of the Earth. So yeah, that's easily observable, and we do see that.
The globe model, however, asserts that oceans conform to the curvature of a sphere 3,959 miles in radius. The standard curvature approximation used for a globe of these proportions is a drop rate of 8 inches times the mile squared.
Flat earthers love to use this one. Unfortunately, they don't understand how the calculation is made. It's from your feet, from on the ground at sea level, and it's a drop off a tangent, and it doesn't take atmospheric refraction, atmospheric conditions into account. So it's a very simplified calculation, and only on a very specific variables can it be used at. So as soon as you get any altitude, you can't use that that calculation anymore, including 6-foot male person looking out. Then you can't use 8 inches per mile squared. The only time you can do that is you'd have to put the camera on the ground, on the beach at sea level, and then and all you're doing is measuring a drop off the straight tangent of, as long as it's level and you're looking straight out. That's all that's used for. It's not actually curvature. Curvature we measured in radians or degrees, not in inches.
Meaning at 10 miles, there would be 66.6 feet of predicted drop. At 50 miles, there would be 1,666 feet of drop, and at 100 miles, there would be 6,666 feet, or well over a mile, of curvature drop. Under hydrostatics, water level is defined as flat, and curvature is not observed as a first-order fluid phenomenon. Under the globe model, however, water level is claimed to conform to curvature at a planetary scale, but still remains flat locally. This introduces a discontinuity between local physical law and a global geometric requirement. Crucially, no laboratory experiment demonstrates hydrostatic curvature as a function of scale.
We noticed something with Eric Dubay. He was talking about having to show evidence and stuff like that, and he's made lots of claims and assertions, and then he showed a whole bunch of memes, but absolutely zero empirical evidence to back up his claims. He's made lots of claims, but has not proven his claims in any way, shape, or form. No citations, nothing. Just memes of misunderstanding of physics. That's all he's got.
This claimed behavior exists only at planetary scale, beyond empirical demonstration. Thus, absent demonstrational evidence, spherical water curvature remains model-dependent, scale-dependent, and unverified empirically.
Except it has been verified empirically numerous times. I've showed many examples of showing how the water is curving. This has been done. This is done in a scale. This is done in different laboratories. We know how much. Now, at a very small scale, like I said, a swimming pool, the amount of curvature would be so minute, it really wouldn't be factored in. What's the point in measuring that? It's so small. But if you get over a mile, then suddenly you're getting a bit more. You go more distance, then you're able to measure it, because now it becomes much more of a confounding variable. But at a very small local scale, like we showed, like a swimming pool, a puddle, something like a glass of water, it's so far out of the realm of even being any kind of variable. What's the point? What do you need that level of precision for? Come on, really. It's so ridiculous and stupid.
This alone may not falsify the globe model, but it does shift the burden of proof to those asserting such non-local fluid behavior. Next, let's examine gas pressure and thermodynamic containment. Gas pressure arises from molecular collisions against container boundaries.
No, you can have gas pressure just simply the fact that the molecules bouncing on colliding with themselves. The more molecules you have in a certain area, especially if held in by a force, then they can collide off themselves, and you're going to cause a higher gas pressure. As you would gain altitude, you have less molecules, then you have less collisions, you have less pressure. You don't have to have a container. Say, I've measured this in my own house.
Under the second law of thermodynamics, gas expands towards regions of lower pressure until equilibrium is achieved.
Sure, if you have no other forces acting upon it, you have to take all the confounding variables into effect. We have a downward vector. If I pick something up, that's not going to break. If I pick something up, do we have a downward vector? Yeah, so we have something that's pulling stuff down. We have stuff that's going to pull down matter. We're going to pull down molecules. And guess what? Yeah, air is made out of molecules. Right? It has matter. It has mass. So it's affected by the downward vector.
This behavior underlies things like pneumatics, engines, pressurized cabins, scuba systems, and industrial vacuum chambers. Now, the heliocentric globe model asserts Earth's atmosphere is a high-pressure gas, 14.7 psi at sea level. Space is a near-zero pressure vacuum. No solid barrier or membrane exists between them, and the interface is maintained solely by gravity.
Yes, you can have a force that can maintain pressure and hold matter like air. This is observable, repeatable, and empirical. Sorry, Eric, I know it's really hard for you to understand. Maybe you do understand that, and you've just been pushing the script for the last decade or so.
This would make Earth the only known system where high-pressure gas is held adjacent to a vacuum without a barrier.
Nope. Here's Jupiter. High-pressure gas next held in a sphere without a container. Oh, look. Here's Saturn. High-pressure gas. Because they're both gas giants. Yeah. And I don't think it's any solid barrier, so the Air Princess. There's two more examples there. I can keep going, but you won't like it.
Across all industrial and laboratory contexts, Vacuum generation requires sealed chambers. Atmospheric pressure infiltrates any vacuum immediately upon valve opening, and containment is achieved structurally, not gravitationally.
So the funny thing, he's showing a propane tank, and Flurf's love to do this. The other thing is, a propane tank doesn't actually have a pressure gradient. It's got propane boils off at like a really, really low temperature, so it turns into a gas. The top part there is it's just gas, the same pressure all the way down to get to the liquid, and the only reason that the propane is liquid is because the gas is high pressure is pushing down and maintains propane is kept at a cold temperature, that because of the pressure that is it maintains in the liquid form. As you burn off, as you use the gas, the pressure drops off, more of that liquid is then vaporized and turns into a gas. That's how propane works. But there's no pressure gradient in there. When it's sitting there like that, all the pressure is the same from the very top down to where the liquid is, and then only reason that's still liquid is because the pressure is not able to boil off and turn to a gas. It's being held there because of the pressure above it. That's it. So you have a liquid, and then you have constant pressure all the way up.
No scientific experiment demonstrates gas pressure maintaining equilibrium within or next to a vacuum without a solid barrier separating.
Nor has anybody actually claimed that to be. If you have a high pressure system to the outside, and then you're trying to maintain, trying to have a low pressure somewhere, you're going to have like a vacuum chamber. You're going to have a container because you're having a high pressure system. Like I said, you go really high up, really, really high up with a lot less pressure, then you don't need to have that solid barrier because you're going to already have your low pressure. The higher you go, the lower pressure goes. That's a vacuum. Vacuums, there's nothing there, no molecules, no pressure, vacuum. Remember, flat earthers think that vacuums suck. They don't know, they don't understand this. You know, to explain to them, they refuse to accept the fact that vacuums don't suck. It's higher pressure moving into lower pressure unless there's a force acting upon it or something to stop that. So a downward vector, like the gravitational pull of the Earth, which has been verified, can hold the mass of the air to pulls it to the center of the Earth. The further you get away from that, then there's less and less stuff being pulled, less stuff bouncing, and some of the gases and stuff can actually bounce and then get a fast enough vector that they can then escape. And some things do. We have helium and hydrogen can actually escape from our atmosphere, and does escape from the atmosphere. So it's not solid whatsoever. We actually do lose some of our atmosphere to the vacuum of space. It does go out into space. But we have different kind of processes like geological processes, and obviously and things that actually replenish that. So maybe in billions of years in the future, we might actually lose enough we can't replace it and lose enough hydrogen that our atmosphere may have a lot less hydrogen, and then we'll deal with it from there. But we're all right for now.
If gravity can supposedly perform this function, demonstration is required. Without demonstration, this claim remains theoretical.
Well, it's scientific theory, which scientific theory is the fact that based on all our knowledge and stuff like that, and that is, as far as our knowledge goes, this is doing. We can actually demonstrate this easily, like I said. Simply just take a barometer, test your air pressure, lower altitude, go really high up, test it again, and then you go, in between there, you have a lower pressure, keep going up, lower and lower and lower. This has been tested and verified, and nowhere in between there is there a physical barrier. I'm sorry, Eric, but it's just not there. And one thing I brought up with the flat earthers is I ask this: okay, let's just say there is this giant dome. You got your salad bowl over your pizza, dirt pizza, right? So we know we have a pressure gradient, right? This is empirically proven. Anybody can do this. We know there is, right? As it goes high up in altitude, so why is there, if you go really high up, there's no pressure? So why is there no pressure right up by the firmament for the dome? All right, what's the point of the dome then? Because there's nothing up there. So it's all being held down closer to, I said, you got 14.6 or 7 psi at sea level. You go up in altitude, that it drops off, so you go higher and higher. So if that's the case, then what's the physical barrier between those two, right? Why is there less as you go higher up? Because there's no physical barrier. And if you go higher up to like maybe where the firmament is, and there's like next to no pressure whatsoever, then why do we need to have the barrier? What's the point of the firmament? It's not holding pressure in because there's no pressure up there. There's nothing. It's not pushing. They claim you have to have air has to be pushed off something and bounce off and maintain pressure, but there isn't. So if you took that dome away, it's because it isn't doing anything, then you still would have the pressure because you still have it. It's there. There's no pressure up there. So, then this is a thought experiment that flat earthers just can't conceptualize. It breaks them, and so it's usually you start bringing stuff like that up and start picking apart their model. They tend to start to try to pass the burden of proof on, or they try to obfuscate on something else. They usually start shotgunning stuff. It's there are lots of tactics they try to bring up.
If the globe model rejects containment, it must produce a working, macro-scale demonstration showing how gravity can substitute for containment without violating entropy. In contrast, an enclosed Earth cosmology, contained by a firmament, dome, or boundary layer, provides such physical enclosure and is consistent with pressure-retaining systems.
Except for flat earthers, because you brought up entropy and stuff like that. That's really interesting. And they brought up thermodynamics. Is awesome. The problem is with their hypothesis of there being a physical dome or barrier firmament is this. How does it maintain the heat of the Earth, right? How is it that our system is able to maintain a thermal regulation? What mechanism is it? What is the dome made out of? Show that the convexivity of it. Show that it can absorb and radiate out enough infrared, and that it's not holding it in. Stuff like that. Now, unfortunately, they can't do it. They can't show a mechanism. They can't prove what it is. They can't. So in that there, but they claim that it's big enough that you can span tens of thousands of miles over with nothing holding it up. That it holds itself, which means it has to be fairly solid, very thick, very strong. Some even claim there's like waters above, so then it has to maintain all that weight. So if it's maintaining all that and it's that strong, then it's gonna be pretty solid, pretty thick, which then means it's convexivity. So then the heat from the sun, because they claim a lot of times the sun's inside on the firmament, thermal geothermal processes like stuff like lava flows and volcanoes and geysers and hot springs, and industrial heat stuff from industry and stuff that's created, as well as us, we re-radiate out heat. Very, it's very fractional. Like obviously mammals and stuff generate heat. Different, like obviously stuff, bubbling up in the ocean and stuff like that. There's a lot of different processes, right? A lot of heat generated up. Now, the globe model is easily can provide for this quite easily, really. The sun is very far away, obviously provides us with energy, but as we go towards the night sky, all that stuff, all the infrared and stuff, is actually radiated out into space, right? We maintain that, right? It's the Earth receives energy, and then the same energy is then radiated out, right? But the flat Earth model doesn't have a mechanism for this, doesn't work. So all that firmament stuff's great, except for the fact that it just doesn't work because you don't have a mechanism for how are you going to thermoregulate the whole entire planet and be able to regulate, absorb firmament to absorb this heat, absorb all the infrared radiation and stuff, and be able to radiate out to something. Need to provide all that. Without that, the firmament is a incomplete model. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually have mechanisms, and so it's I'm going to use Hitchum's razor, which is that which is circumstantial evidence will be dismissed as evidence. You don't have evidence to actually or mechanisms to show this work, and there's no evidence that the dome exists, so it's easily rejected.
Lastly, let's examine optical occlusion, or the fact that we can see too far. On a sphere, optical occlusion occurs because surface convexity blocks straight-line vision, and this forms a geometric horizon.
And this is where Eric Dubay is being a complete and utter fucking liar. See, that picture you showed there is Mount Fuji in the distance from Tokyo. That's not 900 miles there, freaking cupcake. That's 60 to maybe 100 miles. You absolute fucking bellend. Lying fucking dickhead. Seeing 900 miles. Well, and also, that's from a very high altitude, if you notice. And yeah, so yeah, I think I measured it here, Google Maps. This is about 63 miles. Definitely not 900. Fucking liar. Hashtag gotta lie to Flurf.
This means objects beyond the curvature limit should be partially or fully hidden depending on distance and elevation.
Yes, and they are. When you actually do, like, taking atmospheric refractions, distance, elevation stuff, they work always on a globe model. You notice also in that picture you showed there, the crisp horizon? That's only because there's a globe, and you wouldn't have a crisp horizon on a flat Earth. You just would keep going off into infinity, and eventually you just kind of get fuzzier and fuzzier. Crisp horizon is due to the curvature of the Earth. Yeah, flat earthers don't realize this shit. I love it when their own evidence debunks their whole claim.
In reality, long-range visibility tests frequently show cities, mountains, platforms, ships, turbines, lighthouses, and other objects visible at distances where curvature math predicts full or significant occlusion.
I've shown many examples showing things like that disappearing over the curvature of the Earth. Turbines, ships, buildings, stuff like that. Yeah. You already seen them. You don't believe it? Look back on this video.
For example, the Chicago city skyline is often visible and photographed from the shore across Lake Michigan, 60 miles away.
Except I've seen that video on that picture. That's not from the shore. That's actually from way up in the sand dunes. And also, there's still a whole bunch of Chicago missing there. You don't see streets, you don't see the wharfs, and also when you see some taller buildings, you can't see a lot of the smaller buildings on each side. It spans out. Why can't you see that, Eric? Oh yeah, curvature of the Earth. Thanks, Princess, for once again proving the curvature of the Earth.
At this distance and elevation, the predicted curvature drop on a globe of given proportions is a full 2,400 feet.
Really? Prove it. Show us the math. Show us once that picture was actually taken from the shore, because I know it wasn't. And show us the math. Show us the prediction. Show us prediction what the flat Earth should show and the globe Earth should show. And then show us the tall height of those buildings. And show us why you can't see the smaller buildings on each side spanning out. You can only see just the downtown, the high skyscrapers. And why is it that there seems to be some of those tall buildings missing? That's weird, isn't it?
The tallest building in Chicago is the Sears or Willis Tower, which tops out at 1,729 feet. This means the globe model requires the entire Chicago city skyline, including the very tallest building, to be fully occluded below the horizon. In reality, we can observe the skyline visible and intact, non-inverted, stable, reproducible, and confirmed via infrared and optical equipment.
Yeah, except for the picture just showing there. One shows the sun setting. How does that work on a flat Earth? Because you shouldn't see the sun setting bottom up. Yeah, you're just showing that. And you're also showing a bunch of that city still missing there, Princess. Fuck, you're not doing so well at this, Eric. Really, I'm surprised freaking that, well, I suppose there's stupid people all over the freaking globe, aren't they? One born every minute that seems to believe you, but I'm pretty sure people don't listen to you nearly as much, Eric, because it's just the same shit and you've been debunked so many different times. But heck, I'm here. I thought I'd have some fun and debunk you myself.
The mainstream explanation offered for this phenomenon is a superior mirage. However, superior mirages are inverted, highly unstable, temporarily short-lived, and spatially fragmented. Chicago's skyline displays none of these properties. Thus, the globe model relies on various theoretical patches, such as refraction, to explain why we see too far.
Then why is it that only certain times of day and certain days they can actually see a lot more of the skyline from Michigan than other days? And Eric, we know how refraction works. That's how these things work, because we know exactly how they work. That with these, I can have 20/20 vision. So yeah, we know how refraction works. We manipulate it all the time. Dude, get a clue, man. Do some research. Any research? Like, credible research.
Gravity, to explain why gas doesn't disperse, and inertia, to explain why we feel no motion, whereas a stationary, enclosed plane model requires no such patches.
Except for the fact that, like, you can't explain sunsets, sunrises, star trails, and North Star trails, South Star trails. Can't explain the Santiago to Sydney flight, and why is it the same flight time as Tokyo to freaking to New York. Can't explain freaking Coriolis effect. We can see that. Can't explain why storms don't cross over the equator. Can't explain your conclusions for why you have a downward vector don't work, because electromagnetism is only dominant at the micro scale. When you get to macro scale, then you have where you have charge cancellation, because you have positive and negative charges. You get enough, then you have neutral, which doesn't work. As well as that, if you had if it's electromagnetism, then things like steel would fall faster than wood, because wood obviously is that magnetic, yet that doesn't work. Obviously, sometimes you use like density and buoyancy, which is really weird, because density isn't a force, doesn't have a vector, and buoyancy needs gravity to work, which is really weird. And there's so many different things that the flat earthers can't work. And then when they bring in the dome, and we explain why you can't see certain things, they just make false assumptions, saying that these eyes don't work this way, but they don't understand how biology works, how your eyes actually just receive photons. Why we can't see the sun, but yet I can see the stars in the same direction that should be in the firmament, that actually should be further away. Why I can see those, but I can't see the sun, which is really weird. That doesn't work. So they claim the sun's light has a wall that kind of stops because magic. So yeah, it's just there's just so many different things. You can just keep going on and on and on. Why the ships disappear bottom up, to claim perspective, but yet that's not how perspective works. Perspective would lose the wheelhouse and the antennas and the aerials and stuff like that, and the mast before I'd lose like the whole hull. So it doesn't just work, but they claim it does anyways, or they claim other things, and it's just a lot of times it's just magic. Or when it comes down to what's the dome made out of, they don't know. How does it work? They don't know. Why does it do this? Magic Sky Daddy made it that way, so they are not meant to know. So it's just stupid, right? They can't explain distances or anything like that. Why is Australia all warped? Why is Australia bigger than the freaking Russia? But yet it's actually technically, when measured, it's actually smaller than the continent of the United States. So that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So yeah, it's just insane. Flat Earth just doesn't work. It just, every time flat earthers make a claim, they contradict other claims. But yet the globe model, it works perfectly. Everything works uniformly. One model, all works.
The observed demonstrations of water laying flat, pressure requiring containment, and seeing the city show our actual scientific reality, whereas a spinning globe within a vacuum of outer space remains a theoretical, mathematical construct appearing in textbooks but absent in physical, scientific testing.
Well, at the end, there's a lot of word salad there. No verifiable evidence, no citations, no scientific backing. He's got nothing. Now, actually shows stuff that actually verifies that contradicts everything he said. Eric Dubay has been grifting this shit for a long time on this pushing his narrative out. But really, he's been debunked so many different times. I think I did his 200 proofs ages ago, which actually isn't 200 proofs. He's repeated them that many times. It's more like 63 proofs, I think, than anything's actually original. And a lot of it was just going, it's flat because I say it's flat, so pretty ridiculous and stupid. But yeah, I thought the Eric Dubay one, that was a bit fun. And yeah, this is as dumb as any other flat earther. You can see why a lot of flirfs, that's the daddy flirf, because you just hear all these same talking points over and over and over, and still yet daddy flirf has never provided any empirical evidence. He just, globe denial isn't proof of the flat earth. It's only shows proof that you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, and you just deny reality. So that's about it. So remember, people, Earth's definitely a globe, space is real, but don't forget, stay curious. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again.
Like I said, flat earthers are stupid. Stop assuming shit. Fuck.